Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Well-Rounded Saxophonist, a podcast that aims to provide valuable information to young saxophonists and music students in a digestible amount of time. I'm Owen Robinson, and today I will be interviewing Shannon Ford, a freelancer and private teacher in the greater Toledo area, and also my high school saxophone teacher. Shannon, it's great to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for asking me to do this, Owen.
Absolutely. So my first question is, are there notable differences in your approach to teaching beginning versus advanced students? If so, what are they?
Primarily, with my beginning students, I do pretty much the same stuff. I walk through the same kinds of tools and etude books, and there's a general sort of plan with that. Although I always allow students to veer away from that when they have special interests that they want to pursue. But with older students or more mature students or more advanced students, especially as we're seeking to audition for things, I'd like to allow students to sort of drive the direction that we go to a degree. I'm a lot more inclined to say, what would you like to work on? And let them take some more ownership of what they're doing. Not that all the students take ownership, but I'm a lot more open about, not that I'm closed with the younger students, but I really would rather students take more opportunities to direct their education rather than just be allowed to follow whatever I decide they should work on.
That's a great answer. And I think it makes a lot of sense that, especially as they're getting towards, say, college auditions, you're almost tailoring the experience to more of a collegiate mindset. You know, I think at your typical collegiate saxophone clarinet studio, I think that's going to be very commonplace that you come into the office and the teacher asks, what do you have for me today? Or what would you like to work on? Especially in settings like I know at Michigan State, you know, we're working with graduate assistants on our etudes and our technique. And so, for instance, here, like Professor Luloff is typically just going to say, what repertoire do you have for me today? And that's kind of the focus of the lessons. And I'm sure it was very similar with Dr. Sampin when you were at Bowling Green. Shannon is an excellent doubler and plays all saxophones and clarinets as well as flute. How have these skills influenced your performance opportunities?
Oh, immensely. Gosh, if I only played classical saxophone, and there's just tons to do with classical saxophone, but if that was all I did, I wouldn't have had well, last night I played the Rite of Spring with the Toledo Symphony, and I played second clarinet. Earlier this season, I played, it was in the fall, I played with Branford Marsalis. He was here and he did a contemporary work that he's played a number of times with the orchestra, but also on that program was the Pictures at an Exhibition. So I played the Old Castle on that concert. But concurrently that week, we rehearsed with the Toledo Jazz Orchestra, and Branford was a soloist with the TJO, and I also played in the saxophone section with the TJO. So a similar instrument, both were alto saxophone, but I have a jazz horn, and it's obviously a totally different style. But I've also done I've had a lot of opportunities to play musicals. I've had opportunities to play with lots of orchestra and jazz ensemble situations with famous people. That's been very cool. One who just died recently was Steve Lawrence. I worked with him many years ago. I've worked with Kathleen Battle and Queen Latifah and Clark Terry, and just kind of important people. And most of those opportunities were because I was playing in a jazz style, playing another instrument, doing some kind of doubling. They would not have come to me otherwise.
Yeah, that's a great thing to bring up. I think um, me being an undergrad right now, I hear a lot about diversifying one's resume or their skill sets, um, especially with classical saxophone having immense possibilities, but also being very niche. It behooves most classical saxophonists who have other skill sets, you
Hmm.
know. And I remember when we were studying together, you would, often have a few different instruments out in the office, bass clarinet, baritone saxophone, flute, what have
Hmm.
you. And that really increased my awareness of, wow, like this is probably a big part of the reason she's getting the gigs that she's getting, that the reason she can play in a pit orchestra,
Hmm.
because if you're somebody who can only play classical saxophone, like you said, I mean, you're probably not going to get to play in a jazz band with Branford Marsalis, with, et cetera. You're
Hmm.
probably not gonna, definitely not gonna play the Rite of Spring with Symphony Orchestra on clarinet if you only play classical saxophone.
Right, right.
So yeah, that's very interesting to me. That's been a big part of the reason that I have stuck with jazz saxophone is, it's just a fascinating, other side to the instrument, and even here at MSU, it was a part of the, jazz bands we have here. I was in the third jazz orchestra for a couple years, and just being in that ensemble, playing in that style, like even if I wasn't, taking solos or doing all this stuff, I still got to play with Lewis Nash, Carmen Bradford, and Stefan Harris. It's like it's been an amazing experience just to like be on the same stage as some of these people, and that
Hmm.
that wouldn't have happened if I didn't audition for the jazz bands, if I didn't put that
Right.
work into playing in that style. um,
Yeah,
yeah.
it opens the door to so many really awesome extra life experiences.
Great teachers are always trying to get a detailed sense of each student's personality, work habits, strengths, and weaknesses. I remember when we worked together, you were able to diagnose my strengths and weaknesses extremely quickly. Are there specific things you are looking for when you bring on a new student?
Yes, that they try. I don't really, I don't really concern myself much with this, with whether or not the student has talent or if they are, at all good at what they do. It doesn't matter to me. I just love working with kids who are trying and love helping a student improve and find joy from music. And it doesn't matter what that instrument is, and it doesn't matter what that style it is, that they are finding some joy being involved with music is the greatest reason that I do what I do, because it allows me to help them along that path. So the only time I really don't enjoy teaching is when I'm working with somebody who's just not trying and doesn't really want to. All the other things are wonderful.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And I remember, so you gave me a copy of Daniel Coyle's book, The Talent Code. And I think upon reading that too, in retrospect, I understood a lot of your teaching philosophy and approach to teaching in regards to talent um, versus skill versus work versus, a student who is trying will acquire talent rather than, a talented student will become more talented necessarily. And it changed that idea for me. um, I know we studied together I studied with you for about a year and a half, I think.
Mhm.
And like I experienced like more growth in that time period than I had throughout like middle school and, first half of high school. And I
It's
think
awesome.
I think a lot of it was um, your approach of like, okay, you are where you are now. Where are we going to get to? What are we doing next?
Mhm.
Not, you know, okay, Owen's good at this, Owen's good at that. It was more like, what does Owen need to get better at? Where do we need to go next?
Uh-huh.
And from week to week, is he really putting the work into the things that we've covered?
Yeah, but also you were very curious and you were always asking, it was wonderful because you would say, I could say to you, what would you like to work on? And you would have ideas and we would do that.
Right. Yeah. And that was so helpful for me because I had never touched a clarinet before, for instance. And then, within months, we split some lessons on saxophone and clarinet. I remember we do like a half hour on each.
Mm-hmm.
And within a few months, a lot of the gears were clicking. Like I started developed like a rudimentary sight reading level. I started to be able to play more and more in tune on the clarinet, and like that was also very informative. Just in like, I think from reading Daniel Coyle's book too, it's like we have to get comfortable being in uncomfortable situations in order
Yes.
to grow. Like it
Yes.
throughout undergrad, I've always been, for instance, upset with where my slap tongue is. It's like I can do an open slap tongue and I can do a pitch slap with no sustain. And it was like for years I just wondered, I wonder why that is. And it's so easy to just sort of blame it on. I wonder if it's just like the way my embouchure is, or if it's just like the shape of my tongue, or just for some reason I just can't do it. And then I decided like last week, I'm my technique teacher asked me, "What do you want to work on?" I'm like, "Slap tongue." I'm still not happy with where it is, and he gave me his approach. And then I just decided, like, I don't care if I'm squeaking. I don't care if it's like out of tune for a while. I'm just going to sound like a sixth grader for a week when I practice my slap tongue. And then all of a sudden, like within days, I could get that
You figured
sustained
it
pitch
out.
out. Yeah. And it wasn't even a matter of having this magic fix or like finding that reason that clicked. It was literally just being okay with like, okay, I'm not going to sound it's not going to be like a beautiful Bozza aria. It's going to be
Right,
like
right,
a sixth grader,
right.
trying to articulate for a week. And
Yeah.
then that's how I got there. Anyway,
Yeah, that's good. One of the things that I will remind students with some frequency is you have to practice what you suck at.
yes, that exactly. And I think that's the hard thing, maybe even about music school, is we spend all this time in band kind of perfecting a few pieces, and then we spend all this time in lessons kind of perfecting a few pieces, and then we get so used to this standard we've kind of set for ourselves. And it's sometimes hard to realize that it's like, okay, when I'm learning a new piece of music, I can't compare that to like Glazunov or Denisov that I've been playing for years.
Hmm.
It's like you have it's
It's not going to
we
sound good for a while, and that's
right,
okay.
exactly.
It's
Yeah,
okay.
we get it's like our repertoire becomes like furniture in the house. We get habituated with our skill level on certain pieces, and then when other things aren't working out, it's so easy to avoid those
Yes,
uncomfortable learning situations.
absolutely true.
I have just some more general questions too. So, what do you like to do outside of music?
Well, I do cook a lot, and I make all of our meals pretty much from scratch. I mean, I don't grow the rice, but you know, I make a lot of things uh, pretty close to from scratch. And I when I have time, I really love that. I don't like to be rushed, and lots of times I'm rushed, but I really enjoy the process of preparing food that's nourishing and that. So cooking. I also have a lot of native plants. Um, I've been involved in converting my little plot of land to a native garden for about maybe about 10 years. And so I have a lot of things. I think I have maybe 70 different. native things in the yard. Some of them, a few grasses, but most of them are some kind of flowering thing of some sort. And I love that very much. And there are lots of bees in the yard, and we occasionally have some little frogs and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. That were not here when it was just grass. um, so I really love that. I do enjoy reading. I find that I don't have as much time to read as I wish I had time, but I really enjoy working through a good book. I tend to read educational type things, history, it's like sort of inspirational type things. And I enjoy, although it can be painful, keeping up with current events, but I feel like that's sort of a civic duty. um, so those are the things that I do outside of music.
That's great. I very much can relate to enjoying reading, but the schedule of a musician is not always conducive to having time to read. And it's another one of those situations where I just have to detach the expectations and the guilt from I'm going to finish this book by X date and be like,
Yeah.
oh no, I'm just happy that I have this book and I'm enjoying it right now, and I will finish it eventually, and I'm going to get something
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started something last summer, The Overstory by Richard, is it Richard Powers? I think it's a very, very good book. And I started it last summer and I finished it in December. It was a while.
One thing that's been helping me a lot is audiobooks.
Yep.
Because right now I work at like a clothing store that sells
Oh.
mostly Michigan State apparel,
Mhm.
and a lot of the job is just folding T-shirts. So I'll set my phone on the table and I listen to most of Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, which was fascinating. It's pretty much like just an overview of human history,
Mhm.
well, prehistory and human history. It's like an overview of the species. And then I also listened to oh gosh, what was the author's name? Sergeant William McRaven, I think. Make Your Bed is the title of the book. It's a short, like, motivational book
Uh-huh.
that my dad recommended to me. But that was also very good. And I find just listening to the book, it's not quite the same experience as reading it, but it's if you're in a situation, driving, folding T-shirts, it can be a very practical way to.
Yes. Very good.
Also, the current events thing is, yeah, however painful it is, it's important,
I do think so.
Yeah, and it's also a good demonstrator of how smart and how informed musicians often are. I think people have an idea of in their head about like what talent means, what it means to be a musician, and like or if their idea is that it's similar to like an athlete, that's kind of all they're doing. I think most musicians I've talked to really have a very good overall sense of what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So another question, outside of classical music, what kind of music do you listen to?
Well, I do listen to a lot of things. Um, Things that bring me great joy are like Frank Sinatra, Count Basie, um, funk and soul music from the 70s kind of stuff. When I'm looking for just pure pure joy and fun, those are the kinds of things I listen to. I listen to some jazz. I really love Joshua Redman. I like some vocal things like Diane Reeves and Kurt Elling kind of things. And I also like a lot of I not a lot, but I like some of these weird, more unusual collaborations or settings of music like The Bad Plus or there's this amazing album with Bela Fleck and Edgar Meyer. So just all kinds of different things. You wouldn't hear me listening to very much country music, but the old school country that wasn't formulaic. I can definitely appreciate that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, this is like ringing all the bells because I love Josh Redman and the Bad Plus. I love he has an album with them that's like incredible.
Oh, must
Um,
hear.
yeah, it's a blue cover with like I think it's like three or no, it's a white cover with like three green dots and a blue dot, and it just says the Bad Plus Joshua Redman.
I need to hear this.
It's very good, yeah. And then just that entire like circle of musicians with Edgar Meyer, like Yo Yo Ma, Chris Thiele, um, and I'm trying to remember. It was Brad Meldo, who plays with Redman's band currently. He's a pianist. He did a duo album with Chris Thiele, and then that's how I found about Chris's music, and then also his band, the Punch Brothers, which got me like very, very into bluegrass. So like this past
Oh yeah, that
year,
stuff's great.
I've been on a huge, huge bluegrass kick. Lots of that. Lots of
That's great.
jazz. Chris Potter just released a new album, which I've been listening to.
Okay.
Yeah. Also with some of Redman's current band, I think Brian Blade on drums, Brad
Mhm.
Meldo on piano, and I'm trying to remember who's on bass. I know in Redman's band it's usually Christian McBride.
Okay.
Uh, but yeah,
That's
that
awesome.
yeah, and Josh Redman he just did an NPR Tiny Desk concert as
Oh
well.
yeah?
That was yeah, and I
Oh,
checked out
okay.
some of it. It's really good. Um, yeah, Josh Redman definitely one
Oh,
of my favorites.
yeah, yeah. Oh, now since you're into bluegrass, are you aware of Dolly Parton's bluegrass album, The Sky is Green? Or it might be called The Grass is Blue. I think it's called The Grass is Blue, but the song
Okay.
is Sky is Green, The Grass is Blue.
Oh, okay. No, I'm
Um,
not, but I'm gonna have to.
it's very, very, very good.
So, since you teach saxophone and clarinet, do you find that there are aspects of saxophone playing that inform your clarinet playing and teaching, and vice versa?
Yes. There's some things that I cross over, like the close scales for clarinet. Um, I have my own version of the close scales for saxophone, that utilize that first little bit of altissimo. I I probably approach vibrato differently since I enjoy the sound of the clarinet without vibrato. I enjoy just pure tone, and so I enjoy playing pure tone on saxophone at times. That's probably more often than a lot of saxophone players do. Um, but in terms of teaching, I had a lot of teachers on both instruments. And so I received a lot of influence that has all kind of merged in my own head and in my own style of teaching. Um, so I probably don't teach saxophone like most saxophone teachers teach saxophone, and I probably don't teach clarinet the way most teachers teach clarinet, because I'm just coming at it from both directions all the time. Um, and I don't think that's good or bad. It's just what it is.
That's a great answer. And yeah, I think sometimes in our respective instrumental communities, you know, people who just play the one instrument get a little bit maybe too caught up in how other saxophone players play, for instance. Whereas, like, you know, what I've really appreciated about, say, also working with you on clarinet, or you know, Professor Luloff encouraging us to listen to string music all the time. You know, he loves especially the cello, like Pablo Casals, and I have other friends who love, like, you know, Hilary Hahn. I'm a huge fan of Joshua Bell. I find that, you know, a lot of our use of vibrato and our phrasing in the saxophone tradition kind of derives from the string tradition. And I think getting out of that saxophone box, or if you're a clarinetist, kind of getting out of that clarinet box can be very freeing, very beneficial.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you for listening. This concludes episode 14 of The Well-Rounded Saxophonist, featuring special guest Shannon Ford, my high school saxophone teacher and a freelancer and private teacher in the Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan area. The music you heard in this episode was composed by Dorothy Chang, performed by Zachary Costello, alto saxophone, and Guillaume Ra, piano. Thank you for listening, and remember to practice smart and stay healthy.